Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast. Here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co-host, Aiden McCrone. Had to delay the reaction podcast for one day because I did end up going to Detroit yesterday to see Miguel Cabrera's last game as a Detroit Tiger and last game as a Major League Baseball player. So that was a cool experience. Obviously, I not really grew up, but like when the Tigers traded for Miguel, I was kind of something of a new fan. Started paying attention to the Tigers in 2006 when they went to the World Series. Obviously, I was 14. So a couple years later, they traded for Miguel, and he's been my guy ever since. And so I just wanted to take that opportunity to go see his last game. It was literally a once in a lifetime opportunity, and like I said, I'm a big fan. So that was a good way to spend Sunday. It was a little bit emotional. I mean, like, just because, again, he had been with Detroit for 16 years, and that's half my lifetime. So, but it was good. It was good atmosphere, a good time over there. With that, we'll kind of jump in here to the main event, which is kind of reacting to what we saw from Michigan State on Saturday. And once again, for the second consecutive game, Aiden, feel like they outplayed the opponent for vast majorities of the game. And even more so, I felt like this time against Iowa on the road, had a lead for a majority of the game, but the same critical mistakes that we saw last week kind of bit them again with the penalties at inopportune times and turnovers. So I guess, Aiden, just your reaction to the game as you watched, what was going through your mind? A strange game as far as like the flow, because it did seem like early on, it seemed like Michigan State was playing better. And I think they trailed by 1 at halftime, and they take the lead with that scoop and score touchdown. So a little bit up and down, but what were your thoughts as you watched and kind of took it in?
Yeah, I mean, watching the first half, it looked like, there was a little bit of confidence growing. They make that field goal right before half, that 58-yarder by Jonathan Kim, and I was thinking, okay, like, they really have a chance. And then the scoop and score, you're like, okay, like they took the air out, they scored, it was like 10 unanswered points against, an offense that had a backup quarterback in. You're thinking like, okay, like they can win this. And then,
right.
Yeah, I think, and then, the rest is history. I think Malik Carr being out changed everything for that offense. You could tell Kim was not comfortable without him in there. He looked for him as just a big target, and kind of, the second he got injured and you saw him, pacing up and down the sidelines, because he knew in his head how much, he could change that game. But yeah, that was that second half, they get the scoop and score, but the offense just struggled mightily. And I think, that's gonna be, it was already a common theme to start, but it's gonna be an even larger theme, moving forward. And we can get into some burning questions about that. Sure. But yeah, the offense does not look it looks like it's struggling to find a rhythm and just an identity outside of, Nathan Carter.
Yeah, I don't remember where I saw this, or I would give credit, but I saw somewhere the second half drives. I don't think Michigan State had one that lasted longer than 6 seconds, or 6 plays. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So 6 plays was like the longest drive in the second half. That's just not sustainable unless you're one of these high-powered air raid offenses, which is just chucking it down the field and scoring quickly. But that's not what Michigan State is. And so yeah, really dismal performance on the offensive end as far as that. I will say, though, I'm at halftime, as you mentioned, 10-9, got some momentum going into the break. And with the way that Michigan State was running the football, I was there with you. I was thinking, man, I think they're going to win this game, because Iowa can't can't stop the run, which never would have thought I would be thinking those thoughts in the game. But, Michigan State averaged 5 yards per carry. Nathan Carter was over 5 yards per carry. I liked the wrinkles they had with Noah Kim with the run game. I thought those were strategically timed and worked well. But just the catastrophic mistakes again, and obviously we'll get into that when we start talking burning questions, and we will talk about the quarterback conundrum. I'll call it that. So we'll get into all that tonight. But yeah, definitely a winnable game, and a game that for large portions of it, I thought they would win. Unless you have, let me ask you this: is one of your burning questions about the 4th and 1?
No.
Okay, let's talk about that, because it's not one of mine either, and it just kind of occurred to me just now. I think it was 16-10 when Harlan Barnett decided to go for it on 4th and 1. Maybe it was 16-13, but I think it was 16-10. And to go for it on 4th and 1 from your own 30-yard line, you have to get it, period. If you're going to do it, that's a must get. And especially in a game like that, when the name of the game was field position and you have a 6-point lead, which, let's be honest, a 6-point lead against Iowa is a 2-possession lead. I mean, you can almost look at it that way, because their offense is just so abysmal. And you handed them 3 points. The defense gets a 3 and out, and they get 3 points anyway. So just what did you think of the decision to go for it, and then the play call to do a sneak with Kim, who's a smaller quarterback? I know the QB sneaks are all the rage right now, which for good reason, but it's a little bit different when you got a 185-pound quarterback as opposed to a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts or something like that. So kind of take me through your thoughts of that whole season.
Yeah. I mean, earlier this season, the Central Michigan game, MSU got stopped on a 4th and 1, and everyone was complaining that they didn't sneak it. So yeah, it's, the pendulum swings both ways. But at the same time, you're on the road. It's a night game at Iowa. Everyone who knows college football knows that is one of the hardest environments to play in, a night game at Kinnick. And I thought it was, a gutsy play call, to go for it with that field position. I thought, if they're going to win this game, this is what they need to do. And I thought on that 4th and 1 in my head, I was thinking, that's, I kind of agree with the play call there. I think that was the right thing to do in a way, but I think, how Iowa lined up, there was a defensive tackle and a linebacker right in the gap that he went, right to the right. And so the defensive tackle went low and the linebacker went high and just completely stuffed him. I think if he went to, the left side instead of the right, he would have had a chance to get that extra yardage. But, at the end of the game, I will say that hurt them, but that was definitely not the reason that, the end all be all reason they lost, because there were plenty of opportunities before that, and there were plenty of opportunities after to right that wrong.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a collection of miscues that led to Michigan State losing. There's no doubt there. And when judging play calling, it's easy to see how a play plays out and then judge the play call. But at the same time, with the way that Nathan Carter was running the ball, and it did seem like the offensive line was doing a better job than we've seen against Power 5 competition recently of resetting line. I think I would rather give it to Nathan Carter and let him try. But they've tried that. To your point, though, they've tried that before too and gotten stuffed on the 4th and shorts or the 3rd and short. So, but again, I just think with the field position thing, I would have preferred them to just punt it away there. But you roll the dice, and that's what happens with that. Is there anything else, I guess, that just jumps out to you about the game? Again, we got burning questions, so we might overlap a little bit there. But the penalties were 10 more penalties on Michigan State. They had 11 against Washington. And then, Harlan Barnett, after the Maryland game, you made it a note or made it a point to say, hey, we went from 11 penalties down to 6. Well, you're back up at 10 the next week. So still not a whole lot of progress there. The false starts were just detrimental. I mean, late in the game, I think at this point, Michigan State had given up the punt return for a touchdown. And so you were trailing and you face a 3rd and 3 and you have a false start. You burn a timeout because you're trying to avoid a delay of game. There's some kind of miscommunication going on there. And then you have another false start and it's 3rd and 13 all of a sudden. It's like it seemed like every time handicapped by these penalties. I'm sure one of our questions in burning questions is about the quarterback. So we'll talk about the interceptions at that point, but Harlan Barnett's talked about undisciplined football. And, last week he talked about being close. We saw a lot of the same stuff this week. So it's hard to judge how close you really are at that point. Any final thoughts before we get into burning questions?
I thought the offensive line played pretty well. I think so too. For the most part, I think a lot of people have been critical of them, and they answered the bell as far as, just getting some push, getting Nathan Carter going. I mean, yeah, they did that. I was, and going back to the play calling, they did open up the run game with Kim, and that's something that I, have kind of been a little bit critical of, just because, they've talked about how great of an athlete Kim is. And, in my head, I'm like, okay, prove it then, you know, and they did. And I thought Kim did well running the ball, but yeah, that just the lack of confidence with, Malik Carr out and the penalties, just, it really hurt. And, they definitely probably want to have that game back, because again, there were many winnable opportunities to win that game that, they couldn't. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, this is going to be one that I think Michigan State looks back on with a lot of regret. We've talked about the schedule a lot, and the goals of this team being to get back to a bowl game. And, those opportunities are getting few at this point. Earlier in the comments, I can't remember who it was. It was JR Jr. He said, all these non-top 10 games at this point look like must wins, or it's going to be no bowl game for Michigan State. And he's probably right about that, because, there's no way at this point either one of us are going to call for wins over Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State. We'll make those predictions when we get there. But, based on what we've seen, nobody in their right mind is calling for an upset in those games. So, yeah, you've put yourself against the wall here, and I think the bye week does come at a good time. You desperately needed this bye week, and there could be some shakeup coming out of it. And with that, I think we'll get into burning questions. So I'll let you start with this, Aiden, with your first burning question, and we'll go from there.
Okay, my first burning question is: does Michigan State still make a bowl game?
Oh, geez. At this point, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because I'm really anxious to see what Rutgers looks like this week at Wisconsin. I will just say that, because as things stand right now, I think Rutgers might be a better team than Iowa. I might be going on a little bit of a limb there, but just based on what I've seen from both, which granted, Rutgers played Michigan and it was 31-7. Iowa played Penn State and it was 31-0. So not like a huge gap there, but I've seen a little bit of both teams, and I just think higher of Rutgers at this point. So that's why I'm anxious to see what they look like against Wisconsin, and obviously that will lead into our predictions for 2 Saturdays from now. The other ones, Nebraska still looks beatable. They're just bad. they're just bad. Indiana's no good. And who's the other one who's on the schedule?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. And I, even from the beginning of the season, going into the season, I had a positive vibe about that road game at Minnesota. We'll see. And then they haven't done anything to make me change that. As much as Michigan State has disappointed this year, I still don't think Minnesota's great. So I feel pretty good at this point about those three. The Rutgers one, a little bit nervous about it at this point. So right now I'm going to say no. I don't think they reach a bowl game. But I'm not going to put that in stone yet either. I'm going to reserve final judgment until I see Rutgers play Wisconsin.
Yeah, I wrote an article last week about, does this game against Iowa have bowl implications? And I after watching it, I totally stand by it. I think it did have bowl implications of, if they win this game, they could be, even with 6 wins, that bowl game goes a long way in terms of recruiting, getting those extra practices in for some of those guys, especially with, there's going to be, some retention that you want to keep some guys, and there's going to be a lot of, players leaving that we've already, seen 2 guys leave. So, yeah, I mean, we'll get into that, but I totally agree. I don't think there is a path to a bowl game, but it's going to be very difficult and not in MSU's favor.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Yeah, if this game goes the other way and Michigan State beats Iowa, you're 3-2 going into the bye, and then I feel really good about your chances of making a bowl game. You get some positive momentum. You can kind of, like, a win would really help flush a lot of the distraction stuff that's gone on over the last 3 weeks. And so, yeah, and I'm with you. I think that was really detrimental, the way they got away, the game got away from them. So, yeah, that's tough. Let me go into my first burning question. You mentioned Malik Carr earlier. He was definitely a huge part of the game plan going in. I think he had the first 6 receptions of the game for Michigan State were all to him, just targeted over and over again. So just short little dump routes to get him in a rhythm. And then next thing you know, he got popped pretty good, and he's had blood coming down the middle of his face on the broadcast, but he goes in the injury tent. They said it's an ankle. So I'm wondering if maybe he had, and this is pure speculation, I wonder if he had a little bit of a head thing too, because he didn't have his helmet. And that's sometimes a sign with the whole concussion thing. Again, that's pure speculation. They mentioned the ankle. So yeah, that was tough. My question is, he had a career high 6 catches in the first half, or the first quarter almost. And so my question is, will that be the last time Malik Carr sets a new career high this season? So that's a fancy way of saying, does he ever catch 7 passes at some point this season, after we finally saw, Jay Johnson utilize him a little bit more against Iowa, assuming he comes back healthy? What are your thoughts?
I would say, yeah, I do think he breaks that record if he stays healthy, obviously, because, we saw with Kim that builds up confidence, while some of them were screens and, not really long plays. There were a lot of quick hitters that went for 5-6 yards, and he got a lot, he got some yards after the catch. But at the same time, that, gets Kim or whoever the quarterback may be in the future, that gets them in a rhythm. And, that goes a long way. That sustains drives. That's really important in terms of just game planning in general. So if he does stay healthy, I do think he breaks that record and gets more than 6 catches.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that too. I think they finally realize just the weapon that he is, and he was ideal suited for a game like this. It's really unfortunate that he was only out there for maybe a quarter and a half. I feel like it was less than that even, because we've been waiting for him to kind of emerge, and it looked like this was going to be that type of game. So, but no, I'm with you. I think he will be a part of the game plans and the offense going forward, and so I wouldn't be surprised if he pops off for 7 catches in a game at some point this year. All right, hit me with your next burning question.
All right. So this one, I have to lay this out a little bit, but
Okay.
what was the weakest unit? Because
Hmm.
you saw the defense, they did give up a touchdown to a backup quarterback, which, not ideal, but they still only gave up one touchdown. But they did play well. Offense, like we said, the offensive line played well, but obviously they didn't score, but they didn't get a touchdown, but they moved the ball well in the first half. And then obviously the second half they struggled. And then you have special teams who, Jonathan Kim looks pretty good, made a 58-yarder. He made a couple other ones. But at the same time, they gave up that punt return. The punting wasn't the best. They had, O'Shaughnessy had a couple good Eckley had a couple good punts, but also a couple bad ones. So who would you say was the weakest unit for MSU?
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with the offense. Defensively, and we saw this in the the comment sections too. There were some missed tackles, especially on that one touchdown drive that Iowa had. You get a little crossing route with Eric All. I think the defender fell down or got picked, and it was very similar to the play that Michigan had against Penn State a couple years ago with McNamara and Eric All. And then you throw on the roughing the passer, and so you're right down there by the goal line, and they dump it to Eric All again, and he breaks, it seems like 6 tackles and got into the end zone. So, but other than that drive, I mean, I don't know if I can fault the defense a whole lot. They held Iowa to 61 yards rushing or something similar. Iowa's never gonna scare you with his passing attack, but it did look better. Again, Michigan State's defense did look better against the pass this week. Not surprised there. And then special teams was actually, I kid you not. So I do the 3-up, 3-down is like my immediate reaction to the game. I do that every week. I kid you not. It's early fourth quarter, I think, at this point. And one of my 3-ups, I just had the headline. I hadn't wrote anything yet, but one of my 3-ups was the special teams looked really good. And that was because, Kim had the 58-yarder. He had 2 others from 30. The one miss was a 50-yarder, hits the upright, just tough luck there, but still a good attempt. Ryan Eckley, before the shank and the punt return, he had a couple of over 60-yard punts. I think Michigan State had downed him inside the 5 a couple times. My buddy and I were watching the game, and I told him 95 yards to Iowa might as well be 500 yards because it's the same as for their offense. It's like an equivalent. And so I had that as one of my 3-ups was the special teams, and then it just came right off the rails with the shank punt that allows Iowa to tie the game. I think with at that point with a field goal. And then you have your gunner set up to one side for a directional punt, and he hits it the other way. And you give up a punt return for a touchdown. So, but I still, again, to a certain point, I felt like the special teams was really good. Offensively, I can't say that. The run game was solid. I think that would be, if you're going to argue for something else, you'd probably point to the run game, which is fair. But 3 interceptions, another fumble at some point.
Yeah.
So I got to go with offense on this one.
Yeah, I think I was leaning towards. I was saying offense, and my answer is still offense. But I like you said. I thought the special teams played well until the fourth quarter, and that really changed the game. Not having the field position flipped. And then the punt return, obviously, and the missed field goal. So, that really hurt them. But yeah, I think the defense, if you give up a touchdown to Iowa, that's tough, especially with a backup quarterback in. You're thinking, okay, you can put them out of their misery. But yeah, the answer is still offense. They couldn't finish drives. They, it's not all on Kim either. They dropped some passes. Defense also dropped a couple interceptions. But yeah, I think it's just finishing drives. We saw it in the Maryland game. They got to the red zone 4 times, I think, and they scored 9 points. So it's, you know, it's a common theme that it's becoming a bad habit with them. And, you know, they don't have that kind of, you know, player, or they don't have that kind of play in place right now that's kind of like a nail in the coffin to, you know, finish those drives. You know, it looked like they weren't on the same page, you know, every time, and that led to, I think, one of the interceptions, that the one where, you know, the toe tap in the corner of the end zone, that it was intended for Glover, but he, you know, he sat down on the route instead of going all the way to the end zone. So yeah, I think it's just being on the same page that really hurt them, or not being on the same page really hurt them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Let's pause our 5 questions for now and just answer a couple of the ones from the comments. Let's see here. Forrest Daniels talked about, you know, Brady, to summarize, is this like a lost season at this point? We shared our thoughts on the whole bowl game thing, and right now we're both trending towards not achieving a bowl bid. So, I mean, I guess you might be able to call that a program screwed for the season. It's not a good situation. Like, I think that's pretty obvious. We'll see what else happens with you know, players potentially choosing to shut it down. We've already had a couple players, which we'll get into at some point tonight too. So, and not having a strong head coach presence. I like Harlan Barnett as a dude a lot. Like when I hear him talk, he's very genuine, very kind spirited and all that. But just to be frank, he just doesn't sound like a head coach. And that, I can't really say I blame him. He's never been a head coach before. He's been in the industry for a long time, but feel bad for him starting 0-3, especially a game like this where it felt like Michigan State probably should have won the game. So anything to add to this kind of general question, or are you ready to move on?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if Barnett makes a bowl game, he will be a hero in my eyes, because
sure.
I mean, yeah, I think part of him not looking, or not looking, but not, you know, I guess acting or kind of have that aura around him as a head coach, is part of it is he was just thrown into it. You know, he didn't have time to prepare to become one, you know, the way, you know, Tucker was hired, and then, you know, he had time to prepare to become a head coach and worked his way to, you know, prepare for that. And I think, you know, Barnett does, you know, he does seem like he wants to be a head coach, and it does seem that Michigan State is, you know, his dream job. Obviously, you know, that he's an alum, but at the same time, yeah, just the lack of preparation, kind of just being thrown into it, where he's got to learn on the fly and, you know, take over some responsibilities that he wasn't, you know, prepared for. That really hurts. And, you know, he seems like a very goal-oriented person, where it's, you know, do his job. But, you know, when your job changes in week 3, that really hurts a lot. Just, you know, that for not just for him, but for everyone.
No, I totally agree, and I think you make a great point, actually. With if Michigan State does make a bowl game, he should be commended highly. And that's not to say he should be in consideration for the head coach job. And I know that's not what you were saying at all. But like, I just want to clarify so people don't think we're misconstruing that. But yeah, I agree. If he's able to guide this team to a bowl appearance, it's not going to feel good in the moment right now, but I think Spartan fans should be able to look back at some point and say, and tip their cap to him if he's able to achieve that, just because, again, dealt a terrible hand. Real quickly with this, JR, I am going to talk about this whole thing with SD4L. It's one of my burning questions, so we will get into that. Let's see what else here. JR is talking about, I don't know if you saw on game day when they had Mike Elko come on during the segment, and it was like one of their, like, it was almost like a burning questions for game day, and it was like, who should be Michigan State's next head coach? and Mike Elko is kind of standing off to the side waiting to do a segment, and so they kind of all peek over at him, and he's putting the thumbs down and things. Of course he's going to do that. I mean, there's 20,000 Duke fans standing around. It's not like he's like, that's interesting. Like, he's not going to do that. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into that. And as far as like the loss, I totally don't think that has any or is a detriment to Elko at all. In fact, with the way that Duke played and had a good chance of winning that game, even with the loss, I think his stock just goes up, continues to go up, because Duke has shown now they beat the crap out of Clemson to start the year, and they just went toe-to-toe. Granted, Notre Dame was coming off a tough loss. Notre Dame was on the road, but Duke gave Notre Dame everything they could handle in that game. Their defense looks really good. That's Mike Elko's specialty. So no, if anything, I think he's just going up as a candidate. Anything to add?
No, I agree. I think the other two candidates that were named, I think, were a little funny. Obviously, Matt Campbell was one of them. The Iowa State coach, and I think his stock has. He was one of the top names, and it was like 2020 or 2021 after they won a Fiesta Bowl and went to the Big 12 championship. I know he was linked to Michigan for when they wanted Harbaugh fired. And the other name was Jeff Monken, who's the Army coach, but I think he meant Todd Monken, who was the former Georgia offensive coordinator, and I think he's on the Ravens now. So I think he meant Todd Monken, because I'd be surprised if Jeff Monken left Army. But yeah, I mean, those names are all, on people's radars. I think, I don't think Monken or Campbell would be the greatest hires per se.
Yeah.
But obviously, we'll see. But yeah, Elko, obviously, I think, his stock, even though they lost, I think his stock still is pretty high.
I agree. An eggplant, when I said players leaving, I was talking about Justin White, the defensive back, and Hank Pepper, the long snapper. We might get into that a little bit more, but that at this point is the only official names that I've heard who are no longer on the roster. I've been checking. The one thing about this job is, like, you got to keep up on stuff. And so I feel like I've lived on Twitter for like the last month since this whole Tucker thing started. And let me tell you about living on Twitter. It's not good for your mental health, at least not mine. So you have to bear with me a little bit with that, but I'm trying to keep up to date on stuff and things like that. But it's, to this point, I think it's just those two players. So that's what I was referring to. I think with that, we'll get back to our burning questions. Let's do a little scan real quick through here. Yeah, it looks like I'm glad you guys are kind of interacting back and forth in the comment section as well. So yeah, getting back to my burning question, my next burning question. Once again, Nathan Carter over 100 yards rushing this week. I think he was at 97 against Maryland last week, so he was over 100 yards this week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, again, that's that scrambled egg brain I got going on right now, but he's over 100 yards. He was close against Maryland, not so close against Washington, but kind of an overmatched situation there. So my question is, how many more times or how many more games will Nathan Carter rush for 100 yards this season?
I mean, just going down the line, Rutgers, I think they have, I think that's a strong possibility. Michigan, I would probably lean towards no. Ohio State, probably not. Penn State, probably not. I think Minnesota, sure. Yeah, I think, those 4 winnable games left that we talked about, Minnesota, Nebraska, Indiana, Rutgers, yes. And then Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, I don't think so. So I think there's an opportunity for at least 4 and maybe 5, but I would say that would be, if I had to guess, it would be against Ohio State of the 3.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I don't have anything to add. Wouldn't be surprised to see him eclipse 100 yards in those non-top 10 games. And if you were going to choose one of the top 10, I think it would be Ohio State just with their track record of stopping the run. Though I am impressed by their defense so far this year. I'll just throw that out there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw it. Keys to Wisdom. He says we're on the map now because we have Wolverine Troll showing up in the comment section. So we're making some progress, I guess, Aiden. So, but to that point though, like the more viewers we got, like welcome. Like I'm not gonna turn you away just because you root for the team in Ann Arbor. Like absolutely not. So welcome, and as long as you're not being like an agitator on purpose, and like there's a limit to my restraint as far as like putting up with stuff. But like I think a lot of it is cool. So James, welcome, and hope you're enjoying the show. All right, moving on to your next burning question.
Yeah, so my next burning question is, I talked about the bowl games. Does Windman being out for the season, is that cost them a win or two, potentially?
I don't think it has as big of an impact as we would think. And that's because I think Jordan Hall is really good. And so he's going to take on, more snaps. And certainly we would prefer to see Widman in uniform. And I think there's probably some question about, what he injured. I know it was some kind of a pectoral muscle. I don't know if it was a tear or some kind of upper body, pectoral muscle injury. I think he tried to play through it against Washington. And then he was out last week against Maryland. And then again, he showed up on the availability report again, leading into Iowa, and it said out for the season. So I don't think this was a situation. I know there's been speculation that he's calling it quits because of the transfer portal opening. I don't think he's going to transfer anywhere. I think he is legitimately injured. Maybe he's shutting it down early to get ready for the NFL draft. But he is injured. I guess is the point that I'm trying to make. So it's not one of these like conspiracy theory type situations. But with the linebacker room, Cal Halliday, Aaron Brule, Jordan Hall, I feel good about that rotation of guys. I don't think Darius Snow. We didn't see Darius Snow this last week. I don't know if he made the trip.
Yeah, he did. No, he did. He played. Yeah,
okay, he was in there.
He was on.
Okay.
I think he was on a pitch count, but don't quote me on that. But
all right, so I'm glad you noticed that he played though, because it's always tougher when you're watching the game on television, especially with the substitutions, because the different cuts and things like that. But I'm glad you noticed that. So I still feel okay about the linebacker position. So I guess that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Jordan Hall has played well. I think Brule, Cal Halliday, and then once you bring Darius Snow back into the rotation, you still have 4 quality linebackers. So just for that reason, I think that really helps there. And yeah, I mean, on the pass rush, depending on who's healthy and who's not, I think it could affect it. But besides that, I don't think it costs them a win or anything like that.
No, I agree with you. All right, moving on to my next one. I've kind of got 2 that revolve around the quarterbacks, and so this might just turn into one big discussion. We'll find out. But I guess I'll start with this one. There's been some, I don't want to say a rumor, because Matt Sheehan on his post-game reaction to the Iowa game, he said that Katin Hauser was in street clothes during the Iowa game. Like he didn't dress for the game. He was there but didn't dress. That's what he said. I've kind of looked around for confirmation of that from, and not that I don't trust Matt Sheehan, because he's a good a guy who covers the team with Locked On Spartans podcast. I check that out every now and again, but that's what he said in his post game reaction. I kind of looked on Twitter. I looked for stories. I couldn't see any kind of confirmation that Katin Hauser was in street clothes and not in uniform. Have you seen anything like when you watch the game?
No.
Okay. So he wasn't on the Kane Hauser was not on the availability report, which would indicate that he was healthy. But then again, Jaden Mangum was also not on the availability report, and he did not make the trip to Iowa. And after the game, I think, or I don't know if it was after the game, I heard some scuttlebutt that, Jaden Mangum was still banged up, which he did leave the game against Maryland. And so I'm kind of confused because these guys weren't on the availability report. And I kind of thought that was the whole idea of the availability report was okay, this guy's not playing because he's injured or something like that, or not available. And yet
he was making it says he was making a joke.
He was making a joke?
Yeah, Sheehan was making a joke.
Okay, well I guess that would make sense.
I kind of figured that.
Should be in street clothes. Okay, maybe I misheard it, but again, trying to keep up on stuff and taking in. So, well, thank you, Fleet, for kind of clarifying that he was in uniform, and he's saying that Sheehan was making a joke. Should be in street clothes because he didn't get in. All right, that changes a lot because I just spent the last 2 days thinking about this and again looking wherever I couldn't believe that.
I didn't think that was I didn't know about it. I think everyone would have known about it if that was true.
I would have thought.
That's what I would have thought. I didn't watch the post game reaction, but
all right. So I also was watching that as I was shouldn't admit this on a live stream, but I was watching the podcast while I was driving to Detroit yesterday. So that probably was, maybe that's why I didn't pick up on the joke. And so I just took it for what it was. So, all right, that clears that up a lot. So that takes one of my burning questions right off of the table. So we'll ignore everything I said about Caden Hauser. I'll just go into this then. Sorry for the sidetrack there. But I did see Miggy. Yes, I went and saw Miggy in Detroit the last game. I kind of led the show with that, so I won't rehash that here, but it was really cool. I love Detroit. Both my parents are huge Detroit Tiger fans, so it was really cool. Okay. Going to try to get back on track here because we kind of went off the rails there for a bit, but let's dig into the quarterback conversation at this point. And with my burning question is, I think Noah Kim's at 6 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions this year. Will Noah Kim finish with more passing touchdowns or interceptions in 2023?
That's tough. I think the answer is potentially that it'll be a wash, that he'll finish with same amount of touchdowns and interceptions.
That's certainly
for various reasons. So I'll leave it at that because I do have a quarterback question as well.
Yeah, that's kind of it was kind of my subtle, sneaky question because there is this whole hanging over the situation. Whereas, are we going to see a new starting quarterback against Rutgers? And if that is one of your questions, we won't have to dive in. Let's make that your next burning question, though, Aiden. But I'll just say that to answer my own question, I think he. Oh, geez, I don't even feel. I don't say this with any conviction, but I think he will finish with more passing touchdowns than interceptions. Because even if he gets replaced by Hauser or who knows, even Sam Leavitt at this point. Maybe he does come back in a garbage time situation and throws one against the second stringers. So I'll lean passing touchdowns at this point, but I don't feel very strongly about it. And with that, go ahead and hit with your burning question.
Yeah. So mine was, if you do move away from Kim, which, there are some subtle hints at it, but no,
confirmed news.
There's no official news, but obviously that's gained a lot of traction and kind of what I've talked about in the, last week after the Maryland loss on our Sunday podcast about, if you were to make a quarterback change, I did say it would be after the bye week, heading into Rutgers, and that if you threw one of the other two guys into the fire against Iowa, it wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't pan out right. But my question is, you know, look, it seems to me that a lot of people are on the move of, you know, starting a new quarterback. And is it better off to start Caden Hauser or Sam Leavitt is my question.
The obvious answer here would be Caden Hauser, but this is not an obvious situation because you got to think about the transfer portal and you got to think about the next head coach. I mean, obviously, this coaching staff can't think about the next head coach because for obvious reasons. So it's not as simple of an answer as what is typical. But I do think you got to go with Caden Hauser, and that's because he's been in the system for a year. Granted, it's Jay Johnson's system, and it's Jay Johnson's system, but at least he has a better understanding of it. I mean, at this point, I don't feel terrible about throwing coordinators under the bus because it's been really bad. So no, it would be Caden Hauser for me. Interested to see how the game plays out. Wouldn't mind seeing Sam Leavitt out there because we've heard good things about him. You know, even back when he was a recruit, and then and through fall camp and things like that. So, in a much better world, we would have already seen some of these guys play some reps because maybe you're beating Maryland or you're beating Iowa, and you don't get off to such a slow start against Central, and so would have gotten a chance to see these guys a little bit more in a better situation. We did get to see Caden Hauser at the end of the Maryland game. Eggplant points out that Sam Leavitt was the Gatorade Player of the Year in, was it Oregon?
Oregon, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, very high-quality prospect. You don't want to lose either guy. But no, I think you got to go with Hauser just because he's been here. And if you start Leavitt, that's pretty much guarantees that you're losing Caden Hauser. You know, somebody earlier in the comments section said, you know, maybe Hauser's just not that good. I don't know if I believe that, but no, I think for me it would be Hauser.
Yeah, I think it will be Hauser if it does, you know, a quarterback transition does happen. But I will say there is a kind of side to this that not a lot of people think of, but Sam Leavitt was committed to Washington State before coming to MSU. And Jake Dickert, the Washington State head coach, is, you know, up for potentially, I'll just say this, potentially a candidate for the Michigan State job. So there is the angle of if you start Leavitt and, you know, kind of convince him that he's the guy and that he can stay and, you know, run this team, does that play into kind of, you know, maybe getting some coaching pull from that? So we'll see there. But I think just in terms of, like you were saying, just schematically being in the system, you know, knowing the offense, kind of having the confidence and the chemistry there, you know, Hauser is, you know, it seems like he's the obvious answer, but I thought I'd throw that out there just as kind of you know, an angle that not a lot of people have thought of right now. But yeah,
it's an interesting wrinkle because I think when Bruce Feldman on Twitter last week, he kind of softly reported that, you know, Deckard, the Washington State head coach, and I think the other one was, oh man, scrambled egg brain again.
I think it was Kleiman or Elko. I can't remember.
I think it was Elko. Was Elko was the other one of Feldman's who were kind of like the emerging candidates, which was strange use of terms because I don't think Michigan State's that far along into the search yet. But anyway, that's an interesting wrinkle with Sam Leavitt because he was committed to Jake Dickert. But again, I just don't think that this coaching staff can make a decision like that,
right,
based on, you know, who might be the head coach next year. Yeah. But it is interesting. I think if Jake Dickert ends up being the guy, I think you have a much better chance of potentially keeping both guys because then maybe next year it's Hauser and Leavitt who are battling for the job. So definitely, I'm glad that's a good point. I'm glad you pointed that out because it is interesting there. let's talk a little bit about the decision to keep Kim in the game kind of through the Iowa game, because I kind of understand it to a certain degree, and that's because it was, and we talked about this leading, I think you nailed it with going into the game, probably not the best time to go to Hauser for his first start, stick with Kim on the road, tough place, Kinnick Stadium. And then the game starts, and Iowa gets a field goal, but Michigan State responds with 2 field goals of their own. Now they've got the lead. Iowa scores a touchdown on the one drive. I think that was right after Kim's interception when they had a chance to really seize the lead. Iowa goes down and scores, but you stick with Kim for the next possession. Michigan State gets a field goal. You go into halftime. You're down by 1 as a 12-point favorite. So you're in the game. You're running the ball well. At this point, I didn't have any issue with sticking with Hauser or sticking with Kim. Sorry, and even that interception that he threw, we mentioned it. That Glover kind of broke off his route a little bit. So more of a miscommunication thing than a ill-advised throw, in my opinion. So at this point, I was okay with them sticking with Kim. Then the second interception happens, and immediately after, Tunmis Adedele forces the fumble. It goes right into the hands of Cal Halliday. He returns it for a touchdown, and now you've got the lead again. Are you really going to change quarterbacks at a time when you have the lead in the second half on the road, tough environment, place is going crazy because it's Iowa and it's at night? So I guess my general point is I kind of get why they did not go to Hauser mid-game, even though Kim had thrown a couple interceptions. I did see like fourth quarter, maybe that changes, but again, it's just, do you throw a guy in on the road in the fourth quarter when all of a sudden now you're trailing or the game is getting tighter? There's more pressure. What are your thoughts on that whole thing, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like I said before the game, throwing him in, Hauser into a situation like this is definitely not the greatest. But after, the second interception, it kind of, took the air out. He, again, it wasn't a lack of talent for Kim. It was just a lack of, it seemed to me like it was a lack of confidence that, with Malik Carr out, he throws a second interception, that hurts just any athlete. It's like, baseball. It's like if you strike out a bunch of times, you're in a slump, and it's like you can't seem to hit it, and it's just like you don't see it. Like the fact that you don't see it and everything, that it won't happen. So the fact that he was throwing it out of bounds, he thought he had less time than he actually did. Some of the reads, some of the progressions, some of them were there that he just missed. And so I think, yeah, it definitely hurt. And, the false starts and penalties didn't help at all. But yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of people want to see, Hauser or somebody else there. And, Harlan Barnett, when Hauser came in at the end of either I can't remember if it was the Washington or the Maryland game, but his answer to why he came in was he needed, the offense needed a spark. And
right,
once you throw, I think he threw like 5 or 6 incomplete passes in a row. Maybe that's kind of clicks in your head where you're like, okay, that maybe they need a spark. Maybe they need to try something else to get there. It's, it's not a Noah Kim issue as much as it is it's just like a play calling issue that, it needs to be assessed. And, Noah Kim, I think he's pretty confident in, or pretty open about knowing his limitations as well as a player. So I think, it's not completely on him is what I'm trying to say.
No, I got you. I get it. Yeah, so I guess to take it to the next point, this wasn't one of my burning questions, but I had to throw out my Katin Hauser one anyway. So I'll just kind of, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on this.
Okay.
But I guess kind of making up a burning question at it right in the moment here. When we get to the Rutgers game, is it going to be Caden Hauser out there as QB1, or do you think it'll be Noah Kim again?
My answer is yes. I think it will. I think it will be Caden Hauser.
I'm with you.
I don't see why it wouldn't be, just in terms of, everything that's gone on, not just within, the Iowa game, but just looking at the film from the other games they've scored. That the first team offense has scored as many, Noah Kim has had as many touchdown drives as Caden Hauser in the last 3 games. So I think that gives you all you need to know about what the situation is. And, again, this isn't like, dumping on Noah Kim and, throwing him under the bus, but, it is what it is. And it's not, like, it's just Caden might be the better player at this point, just in terms of moving forward as a program.
Right. Yeah, I think it's 1 touchdown drive that he's led over the last 3 games. So, not a good situation. And at this point, it's a cliche to say, what do you have to lose? But what do you have to lose? I'm like, right. Like if you win those non-top 10 games, you still reach a bowl game. But based on what we've seen, I had the numbers too. Let's see if I can pull those up quick. This is Noah Kim's stat line combined for the last 3 games. 55 for 107. That's 51% completion percentage, 51.4. 1 touchdown, 6 interceptions, and Michigan State has been outscored by 66 points in those 3 games combined. So like those are the numbers. Like again, we're not here to just jump on the kid or anything, but the numbers are what the numbers are. So at this point, I think you have to make a change. And if you wanted to try to find a spark late against Maryland, why not try to find a spark right now going into a full game against Rutgers off the bye week? So that's kind of where I'm at. Do you have another one?
Yeah, I have one last question.
Go ahead and hit me with it. My last one's about the SD4L. So is it yours? Is your more of a big picture thing, or?
Yeah, it is. It's
okay.
So,
is it a positive or is it a negative?
Negative.
Okay, go ahead and hit me with it then.
All right, so I'll say, I don't know when we're gonna do. Obviously, MSU has a bye week this week, but by the time we have our next podcast, over under 5 MSU transfers.
Oh,
and
wow.
that doesn't include Hank Pepper and Justin White leaving the program right now.
Okay, so 5 more. You're saying,
yeah, so 5 more players leaving the program.
Well, this is a nice time, since you kind of presented the question that way, to let kind of our audience know, unless something big happens, I don't think we're going to have a Wednesday show, just because we don't have a game to preview. Maybe that'll change depending on how we feel. We could do like a audience Q&A. Let us know in the comments if you'd like an opportunity to do an audience Q&A with Aiden and I. But at this point, I'm thinking we'll take Wednesday and then next Sunday off, and then we'll get back to things 2 Wednesdays from now and previewing the next game. But we might adjust that. Plus, we do have I think men's basketball's media days tomorrow. I'm thinking about going into that, and we will start to transition a little bit to basketball here, to the joy to a lot of you, I understand. So maybe that changes, but tentatively right now, I don't think we're going to have a Wednesday or Sunday pod. But to answer your question, I'm going to go, maybe I'm naive, but I'm going to go under 5, just because I still think it makes more sense for guys to play and to put stuff out on tape than to not. And so I will go ahead and go with the under 5.
Okay, I'll go under 5 as well. I think Harlan Barnett has done, the best that he can in this situation that's really been given to him. And, I applaud him for everything that he's already done for this. But yeah, I'll go under. But I think my under would be closer to 5 than 0. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not going to be shocked to see anybody, and I won't even be shocked if it's over 5. I'm just if you're asking me, I'll say under. But no, I think you make a good point. With that, let's get into this SD4L thing a little bit. So for those who aren't aware, the night before the game, this is Friday night, news breaks that Michigan State's official NIL fund or collective SD4L was ending contracts or deals with several Michigan State football players. We have a story on this on our Facebook page. Go and check us out. And there's not a ton of detail in there, but everything that has been kind of reported is in that story. So it kind of give you kind of the cliff notes of that if you go check that out. But practically what was reported was between 30 to 35 football players had deals with SD4L, and that number is now less than 5. That's what Audrey Dahlgren reported. She works for WLNS over in Lansing. She's pretty plugged in, and so I think she knows what she's talking about here. And it was confirmed by David Harns, who is the publisher of Spartans Illustrated. That's the Rivals page that covers Michigan State. I know David not well, but like I've interacted with David quite a bit over these last couple of years, being on the beat. Really good dude, really good reporter, knows his stuff, and he confirmed that as well, that most of the football players who were had deals with SD4L no longer do. All of the basketball players have deals with SD4L, and all of those contracts are still in place. Like, they haven't pulled any funding for the basketball team. Why this happened is still not like public knowledge, but SD4L did put out a public statement saying that this is kind of a subscription-based thing that they have with fans and things like that, and they don't have the numbers that they were anticipating as far as like the merchandise that they sell, the subscriptions that they offer. It was grossly under their projected growth model, and so they just didn't have the funding that they thought they were going to have. So I guess my question to you, Aiden, is what are your thoughts on Michigan State's official NIL deal or NIL collective ending these contracts with football seasons, not only mid-season, but news of this breaks the night before a game. So my quick opinion is that's super embarrassing for the university to have the NIL collective that you backed have this happen mid-season. So what are your thoughts when you saw this story and then have had some time to think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that, obviously the funding is not there, but it seems like they're trying to regroup in terms of how they're going to approach, just this whole situation, because obviously the whole, Mel Tucker situation doesn't help because he was part of, prioritizing and promoting SD4L to, just the public and helping, the players get, kind of some deals and just help the players build their brand. So the fact that, Tucker is now out of the picture doesn't help. I think, the losing doesn't help at all. No. I think, obviously. So I think it's more of a regrouping thing. The fact that basketball still has all their deals, doesn't concern me in terms of, will it come back? Will it not? I think it's just a matter of, finding a coach in place, that will bring in the funding or just kind of the fan support and interactions with the program. I think that's the most important thing for right now. And just in terms of who that next coach is going to be, I think that, will play into how that, happen or how that kind of finishes or kind of further goes along. So, well, yeah, we'll see. I think it's just in terms of that, it's just a regrouping stage. I know there's a lot of former MSU alums who, are still active, that are part of SD4L, but are still active around the program that, are, big parts in that, collective. So I think, yeah, again, it's just kind of regrouping and then figuring out, what their next move is. And I kind of wonder how much of a role they'll play in terms of the coaching search. I think that's important right now in terms of the modern day of college football with NIL. I think having a collective that's set in place and kind of well established, or just, a collective in general that you can, grow is really important to have when looking for candidates, and candidates do look at that. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think this it really sheds a light on the dirtier side of this whole NIL thing. And I might even have used the word contracts. Like when I was talking about this, I might have used the word in the article that I wrote. Maybe I shouldn't have used the word contract, because if you have a contract, that's usually binding. And so maybe it was just handshakes, agreements, and things like that. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is I feel really bad for the players, man. Like, they've gone through it, and they've gone through the whole thing this last month now with the Tucker situation, and you lose your head coach. You've got uncertainty with players, the transfer portal, and then you throw this on top of it. It's just been, I feel really bad for them. And if the funding's not there, I guess the funding's not there. But when you make agreements with student, and I use the term student athlete, I know that's been kind of made into a joke nowadays with the NCAA and all that jazz, but I still appreciate the term, at least. And so you've got student, I don't like calling college kids because, they're young adults, but you make deals with people, or you tell somebody you're going to do this for them. Mm-hmm. You should follow through with that. And again, if the funding's not there, that's unfortunate, but like, you got to reconcile this in some way. For one thing, the public image on this is going to be terrible. It's not going to be good for future recruiting, like all of that. And I will say that there was another, it's not the university's officially backed NIL fund, but there's another one called This Is Sparta. And it's a different NIL fund. And it did sound like, based on what David Harns reported, that they kind of stepped in and are helping with some of these situations with the football players who lost their deals. There's no, unless I'm mistaken, there's no details on that about how many they were able to help, or if they were able to help all the ones who lost their deals. But it does sound like another collective kind of stepped up and is helping with that situation. So I commend those guys over there at This Is Sparta. So, but man, just not a good look at all for your officially backed NIL partner to back out of deals with guys. Just and I want to tip my cap a little bit to Paul Cronendike, who writes for Spartan Mag. Him and Jim Comparoni, they had a post-game reaction to the Iowa loss, and Paul brought it up kind of unprompted within that kind of post-game reaction video, and he kind of lambasted the people who are running SD4L, and I appreciated the fact that he was willing to put himself out there and kind of give his honest opinion on what had happened to the student athletes. So don't usually plug other shows, and obviously Spartan Mag is a competitor of ours and things like that, but I do think if you want to hear more about this whole thing, go check out Spartan Mag's reaction video to the Michigan State Iowa game. You can find the segment in there, and I applauded him for the stance that he took. So there was a question. I thought there was a question about this. I want to make sure we don't just end the segment without answering any potential questions about.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit more about
go ahead.
In terms of Michigan's MSU's NIL. I mean, obviously, they had the United Wholesale Mortgage they had those deals lined up, and obviously now with Matt Ishbia, the owner of UWM, buying the Phoenix Suns, that takes him out of NIL in terms of in terms of kind of direct funding. So he can put money into a separate collective and also just give funds to the university for, facilities and other things like that. But he can't directly be paying these student athletes the way, he can't be paying the athletes the way that he used to, because I know they did give deals for every single football player and basketball player. I think it was like $500 or like $1,000 a month, something like that. But with that, losing out on that because he bought the Suns, and then obviously they go to the SD4L collective. And, like you mentioned, there's a few other collectives that are kind of there, but not MSU, officially affiliated. So
right.
I think just the whole thing with Michigan State right now is, this next head coach is going to have to, kind of figure out and kind of direct some traffic here in terms of funding and, find, hire people within the football program and then, within the athletic department to kind of maneuver this because, NIL is an arms race right now, just in terms of recruiting, transfer portal, attracting recruits and transfers. So it's a massive deal. And, if they have a good thing going in place, then, you can start to see some more success. But obviously with this down, this just isn't a good look for the football program as a whole.
Right. No, I agree with you 100%. I did want to get to Steven's question. Sorry for the delay on this, Steven, but obviously we had some things we were talking about. We did talk about Kim being used in the run game earlier in the show. I think you do have to be strategic with when you choose to use him in the run game, just because, again, he is a smaller guy. And he had 6 carries for 40-something yards, I think, against Iowa. And I thought they used that well, or did that well. And then as far as D'Antonio, I think the 4th and 1, I honestly did think, man, maybe Mark should have gotten in Harlan's ear on the 4th and 1 decision and be like, hey, I think we should punt this here. And who knows, maybe they had a conversation and D'Antonio just backed him up and wanted to back up his guy and let him make the decision. Maybe he did advise him and Harlan ignored the advice. We don't know those things. But I did think about the whole D'Antonio thing when that 4th down played out the way that it did. But at the same time, it's not the easiest spot for D'Antonio to be in either. He hasn't been the head coach at Michigan State for 4 years. You don't want to come in and act like you're the boss when you haven't been a part of the day-to-day operation for a long time. So I say that to say that maybe some expectations of Mark D'Antonio being this advisor need to be lowered a little bit. He's there to help, but I don't know how much on game days. There's more to being an advisor to the head coach than just helping him on game days. It's probably 90. I'm just throwing an arbitrary number out there, but it might be 90% what happens between Sunday and Friday that Mark D'Antonio is helping with, as opposed to game days. So. Right. Maybe keep that in mind as you're watching games, that I don't think that Mark D'Antonio is just going to come in and start calling shots, because it's been a long time. Anything to add to that?
No, I agree. I mean, just the way that, even the program just has changed, let alone college football in that time span. It's a lot. So yeah, I completely agree. Having him just walk in and call the shots would be a little kind of out there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. That concludes burning questions. We are at an hour and 15 minutes, and so let's really quickly. I don't know why, but let's go through. I forgot to do this at the beginning of the show, but typically we go through our bold predictions. and our score predictions for the game. I forgot to do that to start the show here, so you can kind of laugh, especially at me, because I was very wrong. I on the show last Wednesday, I boldly and emphatically said, Michigan State was going to go over 3.5 sacks. I felt good. I felt very confident about it. They didn't have a sack. They didn't have a sack again for the third straight week. So now's your chance to point the finger. My friend Matt McCartney, like at the beginning of the show, he kind of took a shot at me. Glad I took the under on the sacks. So he knows. So I was very wrong with that bold prediction. I predicted that Michigan State would have 4 of them. They had 0. I also predicted that neither team would score 20 points. I felt really good about this until
I think everyone took the under and the over hit of 36.
Yeah, I know. I felt really good about my prediction that neither team would reach 20 points, and then the punt return happens, and then that was the end of that. So 0 for 2 there. And then my third one, I'm done. I think I'm done doing this, Aiden, because once again, I predicted a specific guy, Chance Rucker, to have an interception. I never get these right. So I'm probably done picking specific guys to have interceptions or causing a turnover. It'll be more of maybe a general thing, but I shot my shot with Chance Rucker, and he did not have one. I think Angelo Gross did have one, though. So, kudos to Angelo Gross. So I was 0 for 3 on bold predictions. My score prediction was Iowa 19, Michigan State 16. Again, felt really good about this when it was 16-16. Not that I'm clamoring for my prediction to be right and hoping, Michigan State loses, but it's just one of those things. But and then the punt return kind of took that away too. So don't feel terrible about my score prediction. But that is what it was. As far as Aiden, I thought he actually had a pretty good day. Let's see. He had predicted Michigan State to hold Iowa under 300 total yards. He got that right. Iowa finished with 222 total yards. You also had Noah Kim throwing for 250. Early on, it looked like this could happen. But I think Noah finished with 190 something. And the pass game really tapered off and really fell off a cliff in the second half. So fell a little bit short of that one, but Aiden also had Nathan Carter over 100 yards for this game. And you got that one right as well. So 2 out of 3 for bold predictions for Aiden. And his score prediction was Iowa 18, Michigan State 13. So we were both pretty close with our scores together. And the game played out the way we kind of anticipated it doing. And it was once again one of those things where I think we both we struggled with who we were going to pick to win this game. And my gut was actually telling me to go ahead and pick Michigan State. My head is what kept me to not pick Michigan State. And it was because of the turnovers and things like that. And that's kind of how things played out. So I thought our analysis to building up to the game was pretty close and pretty good. Not to toot our own horn, but that's kind of where it was. So that was kind of just a kind of brief run through our predictions there going into the game. I don't think we're going to get into any basketball stuff. Number one, there's not a whole lot to talk about yet. Number two, we're already at an hour and 20 minutes here, but I am looking forward to basketball. And I think Michigan, like as I said, Michigan State's going to hold their media day tomorrow for the team. And so I'm fairly certain I'm going to be able to get over to that. There's some things I got to get done. But basketball coverage will start to ramp up as we get closer. I think October 25th is Michigan State's first scrimmage at the Breslin Center. They're hosting Hillsdale College. And then it's either a week or sometime in the next week that I think Tennessee is going to come up and have a scrimmage as well. And that's kind of a fundraiser for the Maui invitation with all the fires that happened in Maui a month or so ago. And so we are getting close to basketball season. Looking forward to that. Aiden, any final thoughts before we kind of close her down here tonight?
No, I think we got everything.
I think we covered it. As always, appreciate you guys tuning in, asking questions. The interaction's great. Enjoy it. And so we will see what happens over the next week or so as far as doing another pod. We might jump on and do a Q&A, but this is also kind of our bye week too, where we can kind of do some other things. So I'm not going to promise that. So we'll see what happens. Always look on our Facebook page for alerts for our next pod. And on YouTube, we post them in the community section on our YouTube page as well. So thanks again for tuning in, guys, and we will see you next time.